But the question in the Gemara is, how much hair needs to be cut in order to say it's called the shear, in order to meet the shear of hair that's forbidden that would get punished by the court. So that there's a certain shear, there's a certain amount of hair that needs to be cut in order to be considered to reach that level. Just like when the Torah says that a person can't go ahead. Morning, Jaime.
Morning, Rabbi.
When the Torah says a person can't eat not kosher. But if a person takes a bite of not kosher food, he's not going to get lashes. He's not going to get malkut because there's a certain size that needs to be met in order to get lashes. So that's what the Gemara says, the same thing by Shabbat. Even though it's a malacha on Shabbat, there's a malacha called, you're not allowed to shear, you're not allowed to cut the hair of an animal, not cut your own hair on Shabbat. But in order to reach the level, is there a certain amount of hair that needs to be cut in order for the court to punish the person? So that is the machloket in the Gemara. One opinion says one hair is enough, and one opinion says you have to cut two hairs. Even though one hair would be a problem, but it wouldn't be enough to actually give him the punishment of the court, because it's not significant enough that it made a real difference. But the Gemara says, if you'll take a white hair from among black hairs, even if you take one hair, even the Chachamim, morning, Mr. Haber, even the Chachamim who say, the rabbis who say that in order for a person to violate, that's considered the amount is generally two hairs, but they will agree if you cut one white hair from among black hairs, that cut, even though it's one hair, is significant. It's something of accomplishment, even the one hair, because it makes a big difference to the person's beauty. And therefore, the person would be chayav, he met the requirement of the amount that's necessary under such a circumstance. And the Gemara said that would be a problem even during the weekdays. That's what we said in the Gemara. Now,
Rabbi, what's the problem during the weekdays? Is it the fence of keeping us away from grooming like a woman, or
exactly.
Is it a vanity?
Exactly. No, exactly. It's that prohibition that the Torah says you can't do things that women do. Things that
women don't have beards.
But okay, but if women would have on their hair, on the head of hair, they don't have a beard, but on the head of hair, they have a white hair. Among black hairs, they'll pluck that white hair out, but they want to look a certain way. They're particular.
This is a prohibition about a man pulling out a gray hair amongst his black hairs anywhere?
Correct. Anywhere that, it would definitely be on a place that women are particular to remove their hair.
That's why I asked about the beard. They don't have beards.
Right, but I presume that the fact that if the lady would have a beard, even though she doesn't, this is a type of act that she would do. So I would think that's also considered even a lady's type of thing, this type of act of being particular about, that's what I would think.
And the intention of this, you think, from the explanation, is about the prohibition of being like the woman.
Exactly. That's what the Gemara actually says. The Gemara brings the pasuk, that the pasuk says, "Lo yubash geves simlas isha." And I have over here a Evan Ezra that says that a man that he on that pasuk, which is you can't do things, get dressed up like a woman, is because it will lead to these type of things of dressing like women, and these type of things becomes a mixing leads to mixing of men and women, and then it will lead to relations between men and women. And he also says most countries, the Evan Ezra says, most countries they have separate clothing for the clothing for the men, and not the same clothing of women. Evan Ezra writes this post about 800-900 years ago, that this is something that has been something in humanity, in the world understood this thing. It's not just that, if the whole world will switch today and men will dress like women and women will dress like men, but they need to know there was a time period in history that everyone understood there was a separation, that they did not dress the same. Now,
So,
The
Rabbi,
wisdom of this. Sorry.
Rabbi, you're not suggesting that this dressing like each other or conducting yourself like each other with the hair, pulling out of gray hair, is about, as we say, gender neutral. We're blurring the line. It's not really about that. What you're saying is it's about them ending up having relations together, them end up being together. That's what I heard you just say.
Yes, that seems to be the thrust of the Sefer Chinuch.
It's not about keeping this gender different than that gender, which today in our society is getting blurred. It's not about that.
Right, correct. It's right. It would seem it's more the at least how these commentaries explain. The Torah did not give a reason for this halacha, but it seems that most of the commentaries are understanding that the idea is that it shouldn't lead to relations, mixing of the men and the women.
Look at the context of it is that men shouldn't dress like women shouldn't dress like men, to establish a differentiation. And what's mind-boggling is look at where we are in society today. Rabbi, you probably wouldn't know this, but the fashion trend nationally is to make gender-neutral clothing, that men and women wear the same clothing. And if you look at the wisdom of 1,000 years ago, they're telling you that that's a line that you're crossing that's going to lead to perversion. Forget about men being with women, Mark. It's telling you men are going to start deciding that they're women.
Listen, absolutely. That's the simple, I wouldn't say simple way to look at it, but that's the obvious way to see it, is that they want men to be men, women to be women, and you shouldn't be, don't dress like a woman means don't be like a woman, and vice versa. So that's the in your face kind of explanation of it. But the rabbi's saying something different, that it's more about, I'm going to put men's clothes in a men's store and women's clothes in a women's store. So a man doesn't go into the women's store, meet a woman, and have relations with her.
I don't believe that that's the intent. I don't see that. I see it much more deep and broad.
Okay, it could be that maybe perhaps nobody, maybe it was such a far distant thing to suggest that the concern of the Torah was that a man was going to be, was going to try to say that he's a woman, and a woman was going to try to say that they're a man. That far, nobody ever thought was the intention of the Torah's law.
The Torah doesn't have limited vision. The Torah sees into all of humanity.
Right, but I'm saying when the explanation, the understanding, or when people are explaining the vision that was understood of the reason for this mitzvah was because of the normal. Torah usually gives mitzvot that are, understanding of the norm of how people, the norm of people, the norm of
Rabbi,
people.
That sounds like it's relegated to the period of time that they lived in. I don't think that's true. I think they saw into civilization that man has an innate proclivity to be perverse. If you look throughout history, the Romans, the Greeks, they celebrated the body and the men with the men. There was homosexuality throughout history.
Right, that's true, but it would seem, I would think that when the Torah gave laws to prevent most of the Torah laws are to prevent things that are more natural, that a person, okay, there's chukim in the Torah. There are things that, yes, Torah didn't give reasons for, maybe, but the logical thing, the more logical thing that the concern was, is more of a desire to protect people from men coming to be with women, is a more natural type of desire than men preventing the men trying to think that they are women and women trying to think they're men. This is something that's very an illogical idea that people are trying to think and they're trying to push. It would make it's a more common thing to prevent men and women to do things that are more normal, so to
No,
speak.
you're not giving the Torah enough credit, Rabbi. I think the
Okay,
Torah sees into the future and sees that all mankind has this streak of perversion in there that all these fences are meant to prevent. And I tell you, it's as common for today, unfortunately, for a man to put on a woman's dress and to start acting like a woman and becoming a woman. Rabbi, it's more prolific than you could ever imagine in your life, unfortunately.
Okay, I hear you. But like as Mark is pointing out, the commentaries, the way many of them have seen it, the Even Ezra Sefer Chinuch, is that it's preventing a different, it's serving a very great service to prevent men and women from being so overly leading to this type of relations. Not separation of men and women, and then just all this type of men and women.
Where's the language? Where's the language that said this is specifically for men to not be with women, or it's just a chok and we're guessing?
No. The explanation of the mitzvah was not given in the Torah. The Torah just says, "Lo yilbash gever simlat isha." If you want to take out the pasuk, we could read the pasuk. I could read with you want to get the chumash. It says, "A man can't wear simlat isha."
Okay.
Simlat isha. The simple translation would mean woman's clothing.
Good.
Now the question is, what is the reason behind this mitzvah? So the way most of the commentaries say is that in order that they shouldn't become a mixing of the men and the women. That is the more common explanation. But like you said, it doesn't mean that there is much more to it than that. If you look
but these are just different opinions on the pasuk, which are giving you some reasons for a chok, but there are unlimited reasons for a chok.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying the common reasons that were given were in the old days. The reasons that they gave was what they understood, the way they saw they understood that it's because of the mixing of men and women. But good morning. But you're 100% right. The Torah did not give a reason, and it could be that the reason is because of what you're saying, in order that they should not start thinking of themselves in a different fashion.
We have to amend the Gemara to add the commentary of Reb Chaim.
Okay, very good. I think it's a beautiful comment. I like it a lot. So let's listen to what they say over here. The Torah forbids men and women. This is the famous Art Scroll Stone edition, all right? The Torah forbids men and women to adapt garb or other practices that are associated with the other sex. This is to avoid excessive mingling that can lead to promiscuity, and to preserve the normal and constructive differences between males and females.
Oh, there it is.
There it is. Right. There it is.
Normal.
And that line, let's read the last line. And to preserve the normal and constructive differences between males and females. So that line is right there. That's what you got. That's what you're saying, Jaime.
That's exactly what I'm trying to say.
That's what you're saying. Thus, the sages applied the prohibition to men. Everyone listening? Everyone listening? Thus, the sages applied this prohibition to men who are excessively concerned with personal grooming, and to women who wear battle dress. Battle dress means if they start putting on arms and things that men they put on armor that men wear. It's a man's thing. So the way it's interesting. So it's clear that seems to be the issue over here. Now it's interesting.
Rabbi, I'll go further just to give you a current events version of that. There are women who cut their hair like a boy. You ever see the haircuts of women when they cut their hair like a man?
Yes.
It's a right away sign that they're crossing lines of perversion.
Right. Very good. and you're beautiful, and you should know that the Yalkut Yosef writes, Ein lahatir legever. You should not permit a man to take his white hairs away out from his black hairs. Gam b'zman hazeh. We brought this up yesterday, Mark. Even in our days, which I brought up the question, is it normal for men to take a men particular about taking out a black hair, a white hair from what? Right. So dyeing hair also is so. But it became, and now the question is it any more a woman's thing or not? So I'm saying, that would be the question. And the same way he said, that would be the question about dyeing hair. You might find people that say a man could dye his hair because it's no longer a woman's thing. You might find rabbis that might say a man can't dye the hair. Right. Right.
What's worse, a woman wears baggy pants, men's baggy pants, or miniskirt.
So Rabbi Vadia says a miniskirt is worse. Rabbi Vadia says the following.
No, my point is not about my point is about once we've worn out, everything's this is okay, it's more calm, it really becomes more calm. And then the idea of pulling out a gray hair becomes superfluous because I dye my hair and it's accepted, and we got rid of the concept of that it's like a woman doing.
So
That's the reason why they say it's common.
the question is, it's a question of fact. I mean, the question, how do we approach these halachot? We do find regarding some of these halachot that we say that if it's common for men to do it, there's no prohibition. Let's say the case of the mirror. A man looking at a mirror. Once upon a time, was a lady's thing only to look into a mirror. It wasn't a man's thing. But that has changed, right?
So all of the things that starting to become disgusting, and now those become commonplace, it's okay?
Yes,
That's
okay.
where we're going.
No, okay.
So
so-
dyeing hair is common, it's okay, but how about all the stuff that the men are doing today? Men are wearing dresses today, that becomes common, is that become okay?
Okay, that's a very, that it might have other meaning, it might not be anymore if it becomes now the norm for everybody to wear, if it becomes the norm for everybody to wear everything. So then maybe what happens is maybe the prohibition of wearing, it's no longer called ladies' clothing. It became now it's neutral clothing. So now the question is there's other issues that are happening. It's no longer this prohibition might not kick in because there's no more thing called ladies. You come to a store. I want to buy with men's clothes. There's no more. There's no more men's and ladies. If that becomes the norm, so then maybe this prohibition might not apply. But there's different issues. Okay. The Torah says you can't wear ladies' clothes, but if it's no longer ladies' clothing, it became men and ladies' clothing. It's no more. That's the question mark. So now, but there's other issues. You're right. There's other issues. But since there's a lot of men don't wear this type of clothing, I need to know for myself I shouldn't wear it because of these issues that Jaime is talking about or the other commentators are talking about, because it might lead to other problems. But this problem of wearing ladies' clothing, it's no longer called ladies' clothing. That's what could happen, perhaps, as time moves. But there's other issues. Okay. I never saw. I never. That we didn't see yet. Maybe we're gonna have to. Maybe what's gonna happen is the rabbis are gonna have to do is they're gonna have to say there's a different dress with a different. We have to dress differently. That we can't wear the same type of clothing that the rest of the world is wearing. Because it's going to affect because of these concerns. Maybe the rabbis will have to do it. Like in Egypt, the Jewish people had to wear different clothing to know to be distinct from the Gentiles. So we might have to start wearing different clothes, just like.
Rabbi, I have a question. Rabbi, I have a question. Is there any truth to the black hat and the black and white that are typical of Orthodox Jewry today, that was adopted from German or European society that used to dress like that and not a religious origin?
I think the idea of a hat for prayer service is more in Europe. It was common you would wear a hat in front of it would cover the head in front of a noble person. So that maybe that's a little bit about what the hat is about. So you go in front of God. But I think the clothing of the black and the white that people wear is just to make them feel a little different. And we are part of this yeshiva world that people want to dress a certain way, and that to show that we're different. We're not just like you're a ben yeshiva. You're part of you have. I think that's where.
But could that have been adopted from European society where we started to dress like them as Jews dressing in Europe? Because there was tremendous assimilation before the Holocaust in Germany and all over Europe, where the Jews were trying to be more like the Europeans in their surrounding. And that, seems to be some of the origin of that look, so to speak.
You should know, if you look at pictures, you look at the pictures of the people that lived there, they had beards. Jewish, was the question, was that a common thing in Europe? A lot of the Jewish pictures of my great-grandfather was a beard. Was that the common in Europe, or that was something that more the Jewish people? What?
A fedora, but it was also a hat.
Okay, that would have to be looked into. But obviously, if the rabbis kept it, they obviously felt that this is not something that's anyway. You know what? There's something called chukot hagoyim. You can't dress like goyim. If you're doing something that doesn't make any sense, you can't dress like them. But meaning to say, if they wear something that's let's say certain type of haircuts, which make no sense, or certain types of things, those are called chukot hagoyim. And there are certain things, but if it's something that seems to make sense, but I'm not doing it to emulate the ways of the goyim, something that's pretty. So that doesn't seem to be considered that I'm emulate. That's considered a chukot.
I'm just curious about the origins of it, because we tend to develop habits from our surroundings, the way you said that we shouldn't dress like the goyim, chukot hagoyim, like you said. But then also you said the things that become the norm. I'm just looking for the origins of it. Does it have a religious origin? Does it have a Torah origin? Where does it come from?
You're asking where does it come from? Which point? The dress, the hat, the
all
jacket?
of it. Where did we pick up that look, so to speak? Did we pick it up from a holy place, or did we pick it up just from societal norms?
Okay, that's okay. It would have to have someone has to do a little research on that to really give. Okay, very good. So we're gonna continue in the Gemara. Beautiful points, everybody. We're now on Chaf Amud Beis. We are on 20b in the Art Scroll. It's 20 Tana Rabbanan Hamakiv Pat No Show. Let's see in the Art Scroll where it is. 20b2. On the right side, Tana Rabbanan. We spoke out this Gemara yesterday. Now we're going to read the Gemara inside. We welcome Michael, who has joined us. Tana Rabbanan. Hamakif Pat Rosho. The Mishnah says if somebody rounds off the head, Hamakif Pat Rosho. If someone rounds off his head, he gets lashes. That's one of the malkut. If a person uses a razor on his sideburns, and some say even shaving the sideburns would be subject to lashes. So the Gemara says, Tana Kamed of Chizda. Tana said in front of Chizda. You have it? So 2 lines further. Tana Kamed of Chizda. And Tana learned in front of Chizda. You have it? Echad hamakif, echad hanikaf loker. Both the guy who gives the haircut that cuts off the sideburns, the echad hanikaf.
one set.
2 sets of, one second. There's 1 set for the guy for the barber. We mentioned this yesterday. The barber has the prohibition, and the guy who gets the haircut has the prohibition. You have it? They both get one. Each one gets one, right, Simon? Good morning, Simon. And each one gets lashes. The barber gets a set of lashes for giving that razor haircut or the razor shave, and the guy who received the haircut also gets a lashes. So the Gemara asked the following question: Amalei, man de achol tamri, someone who eats dates, arbila in a sieve, lucky gets lashes. Meaning, if someone goes ahead and cuts dates on Yom Tov, you have it, Mark? Yeah. They used to clean dates in a sieve. They would put the dates in a sieve and they would clean them. A sieve is something that you use to separate, dirt particles, and from things run through the sieve. The good stuff comes out. It's like it's like a thing that we use for borer. These type of things that separating. But they would clean. It seems they would clean the dates in a sieve. So if somebody goes ahead and he cuts the dates on Yom Tov, the Torah says you're not doing malacha on Yom Tov. So if a person goes ahead and he cuts date on Yom Tov and he's warned, he gets malkut. But then he puts the date in the sieve, and then another guy comes along and he eats the date. So what do we say? A different guy eats the date. So what do we say? The guy who cut the date gets malkut, but the guy who ate the date is innocent. So what do you say? He didn't do anything wrong. He didn't cut the date. So the Gemara is saying, the Gemara means to say he didn't do any act. The guy who ate, good morning, Gary. The guy who ate the dates. The guy who ate the dates from the sieve. The guy cut dates on Yom Tov, right, Mr. Haber? The guy, but he did a sin. You're not allowed to cut dates off a tree, right? Sirah. But what happened after he cut the dates? He put it in a sieve. He put it in a container. And somebody went ahead and he ate the dates. He didn't do any act. The second guy did nothing wrong, right? He didn't do an act of prohibition. So the Gemara says the same question is the guy in the barber chair. It's true, he shouldn't have allowed the haircut to happen to him, but he didn't do an act. He was just sitting in the chair. So the Gemara's question is, if you didn't do the act, you shouldn't get lashes. To get lashes, you have to do a what? An act. You have to be an active person. And he was complacent. He was passive. He's passive in this act. So therefore, the Gemara is true. Very good. Very good. So the Gemara doesn't mean that you didn't do a sin. The Gemara agrees that you did a sin. The Gemara agrees he did a sin by going in the chair. But the Gemara's question is really focusing on to get lashes. To get lashes, Mr. Haber, he has to do an act. You have to be active. And if you're not active, you didn't do an action, you don't get lashes. So you understand, Mr. Shafti? So that's the Gemara's question. So the Gemara answers, so he says, the Amalach, if someone asks you, Mani, whose opinion is this? Whose opinion is it that if you just go ahead and sit in the barber chair, you get lashes? I'll tell you, that's Rabbi Yehuda. That's Rabbi Yehuda. The Amalav she'ein bo ma'aser lo kan alav. It's Rabbi Yehuda that says that a lav, when the Torah says don't do something, and you violate it, and even if you didn't do an act, you get lashes. So here also, the Torah says don't. There's a prohibition on the person to get a hair. You're not allowed to have a haircut done to you that your sideburns are cut off. And even though you didn't do anything, you were sitting in the barber chair, you are subject to what? To receiving lashes. That's the first opinion. Rava says this writer that says there'll be lashes for the guy who's sitting in the barber chair, that's when he himself is sitting in the barber chair and giving himself a haircut. He himself is cutting off his using a razor on himself. Therefore he gets there's 2 prohibitions. Number 1, he's the one who did the act, and number 2, he's the one who received the act. So therefore, what do you want to say, Mark? Right. So you did this 2 sins, 2 sets of lashes, according to this opinion. Why? If someone else does it, right, there will be no lashes to you. But if you do, you cut yourself. Why? Why, Jojo? Why if a person uses a chas v'shalom, a Jew who uses a razor on his own self, there's two sets of lashes according to Rava. Why? Because number one, the Torah prohibits you from doing the act. A barber is not allowed to go ahead and use a razor on a Jew. A Jewish barber, the Torah prohibits to do it on someone else. And also the Torah prohibits you from receiving this haircut on the barber chair. And in order for you to get lashed, very good. The Torah did not give a special prohibition for the person who feeds somebody pig. The Torah, meaning there is a prohibition. You're not allowed to go ahead. You're not allowed to go ahead and feed somebody pig. But the Torah does not give a person lashes for feeding someone else pig. The Torah did not go ahead and write a separate prohibition of the Torah. Don't feed somebody pig. The Torah says, don't. Here there's an open drasha. Yes. It says lo stakifu. It says in the plural. Don't round the head, and it doesn't say in the singular. So it's referring to, that's what the Gemara says, included in the prohibition of don't rounding the head, don't rounding using cutting off these sideburns. Included in that is both, the Torah is talking to two people, the makif and the nikaf. So since the Torah is talking to both the guy who's giving the haircut and the guy who's receiving the haircut, there's a prohibition both for the barber and, just like in the prohibition of lending with ribit. The Torah gives a prohibition on the lender, prohibition on the borrower, and there's another prohibition on the lawyer who writes the document. There's a third prohibition, but there's three sins, biblical prohibitions that are violated on a loan. I mean, there's maybe more, but that's the minimum of three. Unless there's a good shot heteriska that they know what they're talking about, know what's going on, then everyone is fine. It's no longer a loan. It's an investment. So Rava is saying that the case that we could say that there's two sets, that there's lashes for the person who both the victim, so to speak, the guy who got the haircut, who got the razor shave or the sideburns knocked off, that case that the guy on the barber chair who's sitting back, he's sitting on the chair. How does he get lashed? He didn't do anything. The answer is he did something. He was the one. He was the barber. He's the barber. He took his own razor shave. He took off his hair. So therefore, there's two violations. Plus, both violations were done with an act. The violation, he giving himself a haircut is an act. If you're sitting in the barber chair, and you gave yourself the act. So that was Mark's question. So you're a good company. So the answer to that is here the Torah goes out of its way to give a separate violation on not only the guy who does the act, the sin itself is being performed to. If someone puts me on shatnez, right? Someone gets you dressed, and he goes and he puts you on a coat and he dresses you up with shatnez, and you wear the shatnez. The guy who gets the sin is the guy who's wearing the shatnez. Not the Torah did not. He's going to get lashes for it because we'll have to stay tuned. We'll learn about the shatnez soon, about being, because the question about wearing it, that act of wearing it, we'll see. We're going to call that. So you, the guy who puts it on, the guy, you're not wearing the shatnez. You're not wearing the shatnez. The Torah never said you can't put, there's a different sin called lifnei iver, it was a stumbling block for somebody, that'll help somebody sin. Right, exactly. Now, it could be maybe because the situation is such a thing that Hashem in his infinite wisdom knows that this is something that people might, this type of thing is something that needs chizuk, needs strength. So the Torah maybe went out of its way to not only give a prohibition on the guy who's receiving it, but even the guy who's giving it. Because as we see today, that that's if you want to stop people from getting shaves that are not kosher shaves, we're not razor, hopefully by not only forbidding the person, if the person comes into a barbershop and there's nobody who's willing to give him the shave, because I don't want I want to sin. He says I want a razor cut, but there's no barbers doing it because there's a prohibition on the barber. So that hopefully would help people.
Rabbi, the concept in criminal law called aiding and abetting.
Okay, very good. So here the Torah is giving a special prohibition for the person who's giving that haircut. Now, Rav Ashi comes up with a different approach. What's the case that the guy gets lashes for being on the barber chair when he's not passive? You're right. If you're passive on the chair, you won't get lashes. You're doing a violation. You're doing a big sin. You're violating the Torah because the Torah warned you, don't let that happen to you. But to get lashes, something else has to be met. What has to be met? An action. So if you pull your hairs up, or you pull your hairs up, and you're helping the guy. They're helping the guy in his act of cutting your hair. That help, that lifting up the hairs is an act. And because you hear that, Gary, because he did an act, he helped out in the razor cutting, and the instructions is that's verbalization is not an action. We don't generally consider speech. There are some exceptions, but we don't you generally look at a words. Therefore, if a person talks negative about a fellow Jew, he violated the Torah. The Torah says don't talk negative about a Jew, but we don't look at that as an action to give a guy lashes for.
Rabbi, is there a prohibition about being passive? You see someone committing a sin and you don't say anything? Is that one level further from doing it, like putting on the shatnez? What if you see somebody putting it on and you don't say anything? That's being passive.
Right. So very good. So the Torah says there's a curse and there's a blessing. There's a curse for someone who doesn't lift up the Torah. So which we could apply that. It refers to a king was able to encourage the people to do the right thing and protest against the people who are doing the wrong thing. But it can also be applied to there are many mitzvot in the Torah that could tell us and obligate a person to get involved when you see someone doing a sin. And if the person doesn't get involved, you're doing a sin by not stopping a fellow Jew from sinning. But as it says, it says people will stumble. You'll be punished. People will be punished for the sin of their brother because you could have stopped them. You're held responsible. But the Torah will not give a guy lashes for just staying by. A guy does not get lashes for just staying on the court can't give him lashes. God punishes people who are able to protest and stop another Jew from sinning, and you don't stop them. You say, I know my own business. She's doing what she's doing. I'm not. The Torah considers if you don't protest and you have an ability to stop the person, you are held responsible. But the court down here does not give punishment for a person for not getting involved and helping another guy. If you see a guy putting on shatnez and you don't say anything,
Pinchas is a good example. Pinchas is a good example. Who did it?
Okay, he got involved. He saw a sin. He got involved. He stopped the sin.
Oh.
He said, Hashem said he did it for me. Hashem used the language for Lee. He did it for me.
Heshiv, right? Right?
Say that again.
Pinchas, Heshiv et chamato. He calmed Hashem's anger by getting involved.
Right. We have a responsibility. Kol Yisrael that we're responsible for each other.
Kol Yisrael.
If we see someone doing something wrong, we have a responsibility and obligation to stop them. The fact that the court down here won't punish us, but the court upstairs will punish.
Don't worry, it comes, Rabbi. The punishment comes here.
Ashi's opinion is that since you're helping the guy, you pick up the hair, that's an act. And because you helped him, there'll be lashes. That's not an act in the sin. That's post the sin or before the sin. That's a good point. The fact that you paid him, but it's not. But you have to have an action within the sin itself. The sin itself is to cut your beard, cut your sideburns. Many say we're not allowed to shave the sideburns.
It's like handing the guy the gun.
Yep.
If you don't help, there's no
aiding
lashes,
and abetting a
but there's
criminal.
a biblical prohibition. If you don't help him, there's a biblical prohibition, but no lashes. Because he's giving. Because Rabbi Yehuda said, even if you don't do any action, you don't get lashes. You get lashes. Rabbi Yehuda says, without an action, you get lashes. Rabbi Yehuda said. He's arguing. You don't get lashes unless you do an action. Exactly. But there's still a biblical prohibition by sitting on the chair and letting it happen to you. Have a great job. Anybody want to say anything on the screen?
Shabbat shalom, Rabbi.
Shalom.
You have a great job.
See you later. You too,
Ralph, all the best. Ralph, I'll be calling you a little later. All right, about 10. Have a great day, everybody. Gary, so good to have you back.
Right.
Okay.
They're just